All right, welcome everybody. It's Friday, August 1st, and this is another edition of the Florida EMS Webinar, part of the Florida chapter of the NAEMSP. And today we're going to have an amazing webinar. Many of you remember that for the past maybe a year or more, we have been talking about the T1 and specifically the Hamilton T1 ventilator. And ever since that time, several agencies have gone live, including my own in Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. But we also have Manatee County EMS. We have St. Johns County with Dr. Bachista. We have our good friend, Gordon Miller, who is a friend of the pod, who's been on many times, who's been using it for way longer than everybody else. So I have him on as well. But I wanted to start with Chief Hughes from Manatee County. For those of you who don't know, Manatee County, maybe one of the highest performing agencies in our state. We're jealous because they have drones and they're about to deploy their second drone. And that's Chief Brad Hughes. So Chief Hughes, if you wouldn't mind, I know you're going to have some slides to share. If you want to make an introduction and then take it away, and then we're going to go to our following speakers, which is EMS Captain Zed Muvdi from Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. Like I mentioned, Dr. Carrie Bachista, All-Star Medical Director from St. John's, which is near Jacksonville. And then we're going to have Gordon Miller. So Chief Hughes, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present on our experience, at least with the Hamilton and our implementation, which actually began back in February. Actually, February 10th was when we deployed these to the field. There was a lot of months of planning ahead of that, of course. And so I'm excited to sort of go over that and our successes, as well as some of the challenges that we experienced. So just to give you guys an idea, because I think it was mentioned in the last week's session, a little idea about our agency, because when you've seen one EMS agency, you've seen one EMS agency. So we have about 225 personnel. That's EMT basics, paramedics. We also have a pretty robust community health team, as well as support staff and administration. In our agency, we use 24 transport units, and then we have 4 to 5 non-transport units as well. So those are spread across about 20 stations, and we cover about 950 square miles, running about 60,000 calls a year. We did actually deploy the Hamilton to all of our transport units, and not just our supervisor units, but all of our ALS transport units, as well as our one quick response vehicle, which is focused in one of our ALS, our rural areas. So it's for ALS rapid response. So why did we make this transition to the Hamilton? We were previously using a different product. You see it here on the screen. It worked well for many, many years. It's what was in place whenever I got here. It was just a pneumatically driven device, very simple operation, and allowed users to just set a volume and set a rate of ventilation. So very simple, paramedic proof, and there was also the ability to provide some additional ventilations manually. But unfortunately, that device was actually discontinued, and we weren't able to service it anymore. So we actually went searching for a new ventilator out of necessity. We weren't able to maintain the devices that we had. So luckily, we had the support of our administration, and that's one challenge that we didn't really have to experience, is we had the support of our administration in purchasing new devices, and we also had the support of our county commission in providing us the funding to upgrade our ventilators. So what we did is we just did a search. We actually put together a committee that trialed different devices, and what came out of that, and after talking with them, was that we decided to go with Hamilton. And of course, that brought with it, a whole lot of new capabilities. So ASV, BiPAP, we were previously using CPAP disposables, as well as the ability to titrate all kinds of other parameters, specifically FiO2. So in our implementation, we developed new protocols. You guys will have the opportunity to access these actually at the end of the presentation. But we developed protocols with the help of a lot of people. So we definitely had some challenges. And one of the challenges was that I had never used the Hamilton T1 before. And so I had no knowledge of how the device itself actually worked, best practices for protocol development or implementation in general. So I had to learn right along with everybody else. And so that was certainly a challenge that we experienced. One of the other big challenges that we experienced was the transition from, that very simple ventilator to a full-featured critical care transport ventilator. So we definitely had a learning curve that we had to overcome with our personnel. I do want to give a huge shout out to Gordon, who was on the phone with me probably for over an hour one night, just bouncing things around and made his protocols available to us. And of course, Jesse, who I bounced all kinds of ideas off of. He reviewed our protocols just to make sure we were on the right path. And then Ari from Tampa General Hospital's AeroMed program, who also we worked with to develop our protocols and make sure we were in line with best practices. So what did our implementation look like? We, of course, did a whole bunch of training. We sent out some didactic education via online modules. And we made also hands-on training mandatory with our subject matter expert, who was Jesse. So Jesse made the drive up to Manatee County many times over the course of 3 months, and we did mandatory training for every person, 3 to 4 hours, and each of them were assigned a ventilator. They sat there with it and got to work through how to use the device itself. And then we reinforced that with sending out our shift training officers as well as our district training officers to do some additional hands-on education afterwards. And that really allowed us to reinforce the protocols that were developed along with the education that Jesse provided. And so we actually went live with the Hamilton back on February 10th. So we're about 9 days short of our 6-month mark. And to date, we've used the ventilator about 373 times. 183 times, about 49% of those deployments were for the use of BiPAP. So a large majority of our use is BiPAP. And that's probably been the biggest change in clinical success that we've seen in deploying the T1. About 156 of those deployments, or about 42%, somewhere around there, were for intubated patients that we facilitated their airway. And then we've used it about 34 times in CPR. So just looking at post-deployment, one thing that we did, I'm a big fan of, a PDSA cycle, is we started sending out surveys to all of our primary care providers whenever they deployed the ventilator for use. So we sent out this survey to all of our personnel. The email included some of the information that we requested, so like the incident number, date of the incident, as well as the transporting unit. And then we asked that they complete the survey. So it took about 5 minutes to complete, and we didn't make it mandatory, but about 20% of those were completed, about 74 of the 373. And we got a lot of good data out of this. So as you can see, out of the survey respondents, BiPAP was our largest use case for the Hamilton, followed by ASV and for our intubated patients, and then CPR. One of the other questions that is really powerful that I think we asked is whether or not they felt that BiPAP effectively managed their patient's respiratory distress. And a total of the 36 people who responded after using BiPAP, 28 either agreed or strongly agreed that BiPAP was more effective than CPAP in managing their patient's respiratory distress. Another question we asked was whether or not they felt that BiPAP was critical in preventing intubation of their patient. And again, 25 of the 36, or close to 70%, felt that BiPAP was critical in preventing the intubation of their patient. And only 4 respondents actually responded disagree or strongly disagree. And looking into those, most of those were just because of failure to tolerate the mask. And then whether or not, another question we asked was whether or not they felt that the ventilator was successful in managing their patient's respiratory condition. And so 57 out of the 67 respondents felt that the ventilator was effective in managing their patient's respiratory condition. And again, going back to those disagree and strongly disagree respondents, a lot of them had to do with mask failure. One of the other things that we did is we looked at hospital outcomes, specifically with BiPAP. And so just looking at the last 3 months worth of data, I pulled charts from one of the hospitals that we have direct access to their system and looked at 39 patients that were admitted to the hospital after being placed on BiPAP by our crews. And just looking at the dispositions, 87% of those patients were discharged home. 2 of them went to a SNF, 2 expired. Both of those cases were because family made them DNR, DNI. And then 1 patient was actually discharged to hospice. It's really important to note that in doing the chart review, only 2 of those patients had to be intubated after being placed on BiPAP by EMS. And just looking at length of stay, we were looking at about a 5-day average length of stay with a median around 3 days. And that's about 3 days shorter than those patients that were intubated by EMS. Just so if anybody wants any access to our protocols or just the survey, you're more than welcome to scan the QR code. I've made that available and I'll also post it in the chat.
Wow, what a spectacular presentation. I know people I want to have questions, but I'm gonna wait because I want to give everybody a chance. And now you see why Manatee is such a high performing system. Incredible data, incredible presentation, Chief. Let's move to one of our amazing EMS captains, Zed Muvdi, who has been very involved in the process. I see that Chief Coyle's on the line too, and several other people from my team. I last minute asked Zed, I said, can you come on and talk about our rollout? Because I know that, Zed, you put a lot of work into this, and you've sent me some data. I've been following up on some chart review as well. But if you wouldn't mind coming in and letting us know what your view of the world is with the Hamilton T1 after hearing what Chief Hughes said.
Absolutely. So number one, I want to say thank you for having me. Sitting here and watching these from afar for a while. It's an honor to actually be able to speak on one of these and be with this amazing group. So thank you. So if you guys hear me say the word rescue, that's our transport units. That's what we call them. There are ambulances. So I just want to make sure so that way everybody's on the same page. I kind of got involved with the T1 Hamilton actually a little later on in the process as for the last 3.5 years, I was one of the lead educators for Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. So prior to coming into the position I am now, which is the assistant to our EMS chief, EMS Captain Zach Boyd was working with Jesse on rolling this out. What I will say is we have a great relationship with our administration. So whenever we are pushing for new piece of equipment that we can prove is going to, help our patients, and not only help our patients, but help our crews, usually our administration's on board and usually helps us with whatever we need to get done. So, I really didn't have that much background on how these got into our system like that. But what I do have is how we ended up rolling these out. So when I got involved, Jesse was in town and he was doing our initial training with our EMS captains. And that's where I first got to meet Jesse. And anybody who knows Jesse, his knowledge of not only this piece of equipment, but of respiratory is second to none. So as he was going through the training, it was amazing training for us as paramedics to sit here and hear what he had to say. So as we went through the training, it was great. I went and got into my new position shortly after that training. And, basically I'm kind of like liaison between the chief and the EMS captains. And I started getting some phone calls from some, a handful of EMS captains who were saying that they weren't very comfortable still if the Hamiltons came out. And anybody who's in the fire service, if your core group isn't comfortable using a piece of equipment, they're either not going to say anything or they're just not going to use it. So me being somebody who's been, was on the rescue for 16 years, I was in training, teaching EMS for the last 3.5 years. And then going back and going through my mind and remember when we put out the EPV 200 ventilators, that training we got for that wasn't the best. And that thing kind of just sat in the rescue and was never really used. So I didn't want that to happen with this piece of equipment. So whether it was 1 or 2 EMS captains who called me, if they're not comfortable with it, I'm pretty sure there's more than just that. So I reached out to Jesse and I said, hey, Jesse, I think we have kind of a problem here. I don't think we have the buy-in with this piece of equipment. And, paramedics can be, and firefighters that can be very stubborn with things. So I knew that we weren't ready to roll this out. If I didn't have the buy-in from this group, the equipment was just going to sit there and sitting down and talking to Jesse and learning more about this piece of equipment. I wanted to make sure we had that buy-in. So me and Jesse, being amazing, you're gonna probably hear that all day today. He sat down with me and we came up with a game plan. I sat back and said, if I was an EMS captain field, what would I want? So we ended up just doing a quick training where it was going to be, less than 2 hours. And basically what we did was, we came up with a game plan where the EMS captains are going to come in and they're going to run this piece of equipment like they would if they're in their field. They were going to do their pre-ops checks like they would in the morning. Then we had mannequins that were intubated and with eye gels and the Lucas device. So we basically said, after they did the pre-ops checks, you're going to come in and run a code. You're just going to hit the buttons. Don't worry about anything else. Hit the buttons, hit the buttons. So not only now that they have the understanding of how this machine works from Jesse and the science behind it, but now they're getting the application of what this would look like on a real call. And that training, went amazing. The feedback I got from the EMS captains afterwards when they left and Jesse was there all 3 days with us was, okay, this is really easy. This is not a hard piece of equipment to use. And me and Jesse kind of looked at each other and said, okay, this is where we're headed. And, amazingly, a lot of them stayed after and started asking Jesse, well, what about this? What about this? Where we kind of were hoping to get that on the initial front end. Now we were getting it. So after that training, we ended up rolling the T1 vents to our EMS captains. So, quickly, our EMS captains, we have 10 of them, 24 hours a day in our 10 different battalions. They are basically our EMS supervisors. Single unit resource, they respond to, most of our high-end acuity calls. So, we have 55 rescues, so it would be very difficult to put these on every single one of our transport units. So we started with that. We rolled them out in April. We've had 95 total cases. And right now our protocol for that is all adult cardiac arrest. And anytime basically a patient is going to get an eye gel and or an intubation, we were going to use the T1 Hamilton. And then also our EMS captains are transporting with the crews because they're the ones trained on this. So 95 uses so far. 76 of them have been used on cardiac arrest and 19 of them have been used on DSIs. Right now our ROS rates with it is about 26%. So one of the things I wanted to make sure was as we rolled this out, kind of like Chief did, surveys, working under Chief Cole and working with you, Dr. Antevi, we're big on surveys because really we want honest feedback from our crew. So as we rolled this out, every time we put a procedure in our EPCR system. So that way myself and our CQI coordinator, Captain Pope, would get a notification. So one, I would review the report, I'd review the code stat to make sure there was nothing going on with the patient and the patient did improve like we would expect. And then honestly, I wanted feedback from the EMS captains and they were great. They gave us amazing feedback. There were some hiccups at the beginning, but I relayed them to Jesse and Jesse was amazing. We had this one alarm that kept going off. Jesse was able to make a video for me real quick. We sent it out to the EMS captain groups and it fixed the problem. So one of the other things we did was we sent out target solution videos, which is what we do for training. And Jesse made, I think, 8 videos for us and it was 2-minute videos and pretty much what we do in CPR mode, ASV mode, how you go back if you got ROS. So, over the last few months, the EMS captains really have come back to me and said they love this piece of equipment. We've had some hiccups. We noticed some things that we had to adjust, and with Jesse's help, we've been making those adjustments. But for the most part, we are going to go ahead. We are actually about to next week update our protocols, and we're putting the T1 Hamilton now in officially into our protocols and not just a memo. We did roll it out as just for adults because anytime you roll out a new piece of equipment, we want to make sure our EMS captains are very comfortable using this. And we already know how stressful running a pediatric code is, or any type of pediatric emergency can be. So we are now that the EMS captains are comfortable, we are going to be adding pediatrics to that protocol now. So the one thing that we did get feedback from the EMS captains was, and where I think, I might've had a mishap because we were talking about the good, but we also want to talk about kind of where we had some misses was, we probably should have sent these training videos out to our whole department. So all our crews, even though they may not be using it, can understand the system. My goal was kind of let the EMS captains get comfortable with it first and then roll it out. And we did encourage the EMS captains to go around and show their crews. So what we are going to be doing shortly here is going to be sending out all those videos Jesse made for us and send them out to the whole department. Even though they may not be using it, at least they'll have an understanding of what this equipment can do for our crews. So, the surveys, we had a 71% return on our surveys, which is huge for me because without that feedback, we can't make any adjustments. So, I'm hoping to improve on this as we move along with Jesse's help and the help of our EMS captains on how we can extend this program with the T1 ventilator. But overall, it's been amazing and I'm going to keep track and we'll see where we go from here. But that's pretty much, how we went through it. The biggest thing was getting to buy in for these EMS captains and for us with firefighters. Keep it simple. Show them how they're going to use it in the field, and they'll love it. So
beautiful. That was some great feedback. You're a great speaker. You should keep speaking. And I think that from a tactical perspective, I think a lot of people are probably going to reach out and want to know exactly what those videos look like, how you did it. But again, having Jesse as a resource, which I'm going to come to you, Jesse, at the end, but having you there as a resource has been invaluable. So I think the company should give you a raise. All right, let's go to Dr. Kerry Bachista, who, who is, again, one of the highest performing medical directors that I know. And not only did he incorporate the Hamilton, but when I spoke to him, he kind of echoes what Chief Hughes said, which is like, holy shit, BiPAP is insane. So I wanted him to talk about that and the rest of his rollout. So Kerry, thanks for joining us. There we go.
There we go. All right, real quick. This is a presentation that I gave at the First Air, First Care conference back in June. So real quick, just about the county, we have 400 plus personnel. We're all 911, ALS, fire rescue, 20-ish stations. We put the Hamilton on all of our ALS transport units, so all of our rescues, 65,000-ish calls per year. And most importantly is we don't historically, we're a fire rescue department. We do 911. We do not do interfacility transports, and we don't do any critical care transport. So that was important when it came to what we were doing. Why did we look at this? We looked at this because for two reasons. Number one, as whenever I work in the ER and I see EMS bring somebody in and they've just got a non-rebreather sort of stuck to their face, I know that's not really doing anything. It's like that's the EMS, hey, we tried something, and there you go. But the standard CPAP that we have on the vehicles, that disposable CPAP, it's really substandard. They come into the ER and it's immediately taken off. It's really not working. So when they come to the ER, they're put on non-invasive positive pressure ventilation. So our thought was, what can we do? Can we bring that to the street? What can we do? Because that's more physiologic. So when we were looking at the selection process of what we're going to do for the BiPAP, we were looking for vents. Obviously, a vent, that's easy. They're intubated. You can put them on a ventilator. That's great. But we're going to roll this out. We're going to do the whole system. We're not just going to put them in certain places. And the problem I have with most pre-hospital vents is math, right? There's a lot of math. There's a lot of buttons. There's a lot of things. And it's going to really hinder the rollout. And so that's what we kind of came to the Hamilton T1 because the ease of use for us was sort of the selling point. This is something that we could kind of put out there, and the ease of use would make it good. It's also got the ASV, the adaptive support ventilation, so that AI-driven ventilation really helps, as opposed to just BVMing the patient, who's usually the youngest, least experienced EMT is just bagging. So we thought that would be good. So as far as our training goes, when we put out ventilator training, a lot of the guys on the street got excited for what's on the right there. They thought that's the ventilation we would be training. They were disappointed. We looked at our training in a different way. I think, most training in EMS, and especially us in the fire service, training is, hey, this happens, push this button. And hey, you've been trained. But education is broader knowledge and some critical thinking skills. So we wanted to do education for this and not training. And one of the ways we looked at this was we wanted to kind of, normally you put it out and you say, hey, listen, we wanted, one of the goals of this, of getting this ventilator, was we like the ease of use. It's, ventilate, height, weight, go. And that's an ease of use. But we knew if we started with that as the message, then that's all that would be received. And we didn't want that. So we kind of went with an inverted training pyramid. We started right off the bat, online in-depth lectures, education, where we went over mechanics and physiology. And we knew that would kind of self-select out the champions in the mix, the people who would really dive into this and really sort of learn these things, and then kind of get our champions throughout the department. And then we brought them all in, and Jesse was there. We brought them all in and did a skills lab. They did more specific lectures for a couple of days. And then we did a final training right before we launched. And it was basically the just-in-time training. Just do this. You want to BiPAP, it's height, weight, go. And then we deployed in the fall, late in the fall. We rolled it out 1 battalion at a time. And when we did this, we used our training personnel to sort of flood the zone. So They went out, we rolled it out for a couple of weeks in this battalion, and we had our training personnel out there. They're at the station, they're going over with the crews, and they were going on the calls. And if there was a call where it could be used, they're right there and they're showing the personnel, hey, this is how you use it. This is how it goes. As far as the protocol goes, I'm sure there's somebody on this call. I'll give them somebody else credit. We use the R&D protocol method for this. That's the rip off and duplicate. So we borrowed this initial protocol from another department. I don't know where we got it from. It was a little complex. There was some restrictive and obstructive lung disease protocols. There were some complex feedback loops and adjusting made with end tidal. Really, for us, we were looking at this. We do 20 to 30-minute transport times, and we really like the ease of use. So I thought about, what do we do that first 30 minutes they're in the ER? Listen, I'm not, when I put a patient who's in respiratory distress on BiPAP, I'm not getting all of this gases and making adjustments based on this, that first 20, 30 minutes. What am I doing is I'm looking at the work of breathing and a tidal volume, and I'm sort of adjusting from there. And so we kind of changed our protocol to go with that. Our results, the crews love it. Even crews that you didn't think would be about BiPAP and the ventilator, they love it. They just said, hey, listen, I had this patient the other day and we put them on BiPAP, and man, it turned them around. And by the time they got to the hospital, they were fine. And they really like the ease of use, and they really like the success of the treatment. So it's been well received in our department. We also use it. Obviously, we use the ventilator part of it. They enjoy that. They're enjoying that part of it too. In that it's just a controlled, easy, professional way to ventilate the patient on the way to the hospital. But we've had great success with it so far, even though it hasn't even been a year.
Awesome. And I think that we're going to learn from that, because obviously we want to continue to expand our offering, in Palm Beach County. And so we've now heard that from pretty much all the speakers, right? That this thing is not just to be used for one type of patient. So with that said, I'm going to bring in Gordon Miller. So Gordon, I think the R&D, that was from you. You were probably one of the first people that at least I had heard of using this. And now the word is clearly spreading. So you've been using this for a long time. You were on this webinar talking about the T1. What are your thoughts after hearing what people have said? Do things resonate? And what are some of your thoughts before we go to Jesse?
I think everybody covered how well they work. I've been using them for 9.5 years. Originally, when I got to start, there was no such thing as the EMS division of Hamilton. It was I called them up, said, "Hey, I'm a 911 ambulance service," and they're like, "Wait, what?" Okay. There was no guideline. I had no help. I had used ventilators on a helicopter, and I had to come up with everything from nothing. And over the years, kind of developed them. Hamilton would call me and say, "Hey, can you help this person out?" And I've learned more from other agencies. And hey, this agency had this issue. Okay, well, let me address this in these guidelines. Let me change something up a little bit. And I tell everybody, I was like, if you don't have my current guidelines within the last 6 months, I've literally updated them probably 20 times over that 9.5 years or so. Phenomenal ventilator. I can't, it would take me hours to explain everything. But just know when people call 911 for asthma or COPD or, any kind of CHF exacerbation, they're not calling because they want a breathing treatment or a low oxygen. They want you to be able to help them. And in 9.5 years, I've only had to intubate one patient that I got to in time to put on non-invasive. I use it for pre-oxygenation for DSI, RSI. Even though I know traditional modes very well, I use ASV. Sorry about that.
No, we don't hear anything. Oh, we heard that. Go ahead. Are you getting a radio call? All right. What are you working or something?
Right. Yeah, I'm working today. So if the biggest thing, everybody's already said their data and thing like that. I'm not a big data acquisition guy. I'm the guy that, hey, you have a problem, I'll solve it for you. If anybody out there is on the fence about ventilators, I will spend, golly, I will spend hours on the phone with you and help you in any way. And so will Jesse. You will have the support you need. I don't care if you don't know anything about a ventilator. I've talked to every agency out there. I have no problem spending hours on the phone with you. There is nothing better than a T1. I will say that, and I've used many.
So basically, you're saying that you're a vanilla ice. If you got a problem, I'll solve it. Okay, that's what you said. Okay, I got you. I
Oh,
got you.
and there's another thing. I'm a rock guy, kind of. So, like, and I literally thought, like, what could be some funny little music person I could say, and I would say this: a BVM. I think Ozzy nailed it when he said "The Road to Nowhere." That's a BVM. So it's a rescue device, and we don't use non-rebreathers here really anymore. I have many phenomenal stories. Like I said, we just don't have enough time to cover all that or unpack that. But if anybody's out there that sees this and wants to spend hours on the phone with me, please, you can get in contact with me and I'll do so. And or Jesse, both of us talk a lot. We're both ventilation nerds and both T1 nerds. So hopefully I'll make the volumetric capnography easy for everybody to
Yeah,
understand.
well, we spoke about it last week. We're doing that. So, all right. So, Gordon, thank you so much, Jesse. So, your name has been used quite a bit today. First of all, from all of us, thank you for your passion, for your love of EMS. I do want to get to other people into the crowd, but I do want you to make a couple of comments. But just
Peter,
thank you for all what you've
what I'll
done.
do is I'll just close very quickly with this is what the T1 offers, separate from all of the great responses that we've heard today, is it finally offers a true clinical decision support system for EMS professionals in the cardiorespiratory management, because the data that is provided to the clinicians is allowing them to make actionable decisions in an area that they just don't get enough time to spend during paramedic school or when they're on the road training. Now, that is coupled with us having a devoted EMS division here at Hamilton now, so that amplifies the access to education. Gordon mentioned his his availability to support us, and that really just comes, as he said. I mean, he did it on his own, right? But what I hope people take away from the presentations today is that this is finally a device that it may look complex when you first look at it from what Brad described, what they were using, that VR1, and you'll see care vents, you'll see auto vents, right? They're simplistic in design, but in reality, they pose great risks to professionals that are experts in their field, but not when it comes to mechanical ventilation. When you're utilizing a rudimentary pneumatically driven device, there are much higher risks versus reward, which has actually caused a slide backwards into BVM and manual ventilation. You've seen this big progression back towards little widgets that get fitted into the BVM equation, which is fine. I think it's a great rescue device. But when we're talking about actually potentially avoiding mechanical or intubating a patient, if we can utilize proper BiPAP, I think we're going to see a dramatic drop in airway management risk factors, and that will bring cost reduction associated with that as well. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, cost and time in the hospital, that's huge, which increases risk for sepsis and just death in general. So, and by the way, I should say I have no conflict of interest. I wish I did. If you want to give me stock or all of us stock, we'll take it. But yeah, this is just
we're private. You can't have it.
I know. It's horrible. All right, now let's get to the science. So, Tanner, you're hearing all this. Your brain is probably exploding with like, okay, give me the data here. What's your thoughts, Tanner?
Yeah, no. So, and I don't have any harsh criticisms here, Dr. Antevi. So I know that, of all of the interventions that we have in EMS, non-invasive positive pressure ventilation to avoid intubation. There's even some trials out there that suggest a reduction in mortality. It's an intervention, again, that is really backed by the highest quality available evidence. And so, anything that can be done to facilitate non-invasive positive pressure ventilation for more patients, making it more tolerable for them, making it safer for them, I think that's a wonderful thing, right? Scientifically, has it been established that BiPAP versus CPAP provides any additional benefit or is more tolerable in any randomized controlled trial. I'm not aware of any data that suggests that. But again, overall, non-invasive positive pressure ventilation, the available randomized evidence that's out there suggests that's a wonderful thing for the patient populations that we've been describing. I also really like the idea of using a ventilator during CPR as an adjunct to a supraglottic airway or an endotracheal tube. We've talked on this webinar about emerging evidence that suggests that bag valve mask ventilation is really not done well during resuscitation, and so having a tool that enables you to monitor in real time ventilation pressures, allow you to monitor for the presence of leak or obstructive pathology, right? I think that sort of technology, if deployed early during cardiac arrest resuscitation, might actually improve the outcomes for some subsets of these patients. Of course, I would encourage, right, everybody on this call, if you have data, if you want to do a before and after study, right, looking at intubation rates in the ED from when you have CPAP transitioning to the BiPAP systems, right, I would encourage collection and publication of that data. But no, seems like a great device, and I love hearing about all the programs that are implementing it with reported success.
So
Tanner, Peter, can I just add one thing to what Tanner mentioned there? I think one of the most important things when you talk about these studies that haven't been put out there to decide one versus the other is, let's just identify on its face. There's two types of respiratory failure that our patients experience, type 1, type 2. When you talk about Dr. Bachista mentioning they're a 911 service, Gordon Miller is a 911 service, 9 times out of 10, and I will see the nods on this recording, okay? By the time the patient is calling because of their respiratory distress, they have already progressed into type 2 ventilatory failure, which would now make the oxygenation failure secondary to the ventilatory failure. And so applying CPAP is actually more likely to cause an increase in respiratory distress, especially when we're utilizing a device that doesn't actually give us a true measurement from a flow sensor. So that's the science of it, is if we're not actually identifying what type of respiratory failure the patient's in, how can we actually ask the question of what is the correct intervention?
So, so Jesse, now we have that information. So I saw Chief Hughes data, and the first thing I said to myself is, why isn't that being published, right? Just the number of days being saved, the number of intubations being saved, add a dollar amount to that, and this is all being done by EMS. And so I think Carrie probably has a lot of data on that. Chief Hughes, you have a lot of data on that. I'm sure we're going to have data once we start doing it on the BiPAP side. But we're running a little over, but I want to go to Dr. Greenfield. So let's move from the ground to the air. And another guy who's an expert in this area, who's been using the T1 for quite a while. Brett, thanks for joining up from the Northeast. What are your thoughts? And love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, Gordon, Jesse, Carrie, everybody knows, and Peter, you know how passionate I am about this. I think the use of the mechanical ventilator in the 911 space has been long overdue. Yeah. And I think, like many people have talked about, what is the first, Carrie, you were spot on when you said, what's the first thing respiratory does when you walk into the hospital? They don't care what you did, they just yank it off. So at my shop, we started on the flight side, brought it to our ground critical care transport team. And then my chief was like, well, we were doing mechanical ventilation for a while with, a device that was okay, but the adoption wasn't great. And we moved to the Hamilton T1, and we just took off. I mean, our compliance rates shot up. Our patient outcomes were better. We really have stopped using disposable CPAP and use BiPAP. The beauty of the Hamilton platform is that it is simple, yet it can be one of the most complex devices you can find out there, similar to what you would find in any ICU type environment. So yeah, it's intimidating. I think it's not about what you do, but how you do it. I know Chief Hughes talked about, kind of listening to the or Zed talked about, listening to your captains, pulling back. This is intimidating stuff, but it's not out of the realm of possibility for any organization who commits to it. Takes a pause, adjusts. You're going to make mistakes, but also the beauty of, Gordon and Jesse, they're out there and they'll help. And we're always willing to, make sure we're doing the right thing no matter where you are.
Perfect. That's a great, very well said. I'm going to go back to Dr. Bachista because I've heard this before, and I know that it's out there because obviously these devices aren't cheap. So Carrie, talk about your use of the funding from the opioid funding.
So
for this.
we used opioid grant. I put some stuff in the chat because I saw some people ask questions. We used opioid grant funding for ours. It's I guess the opioid overdose funding that came out 2 years ago. We looked at that and we just basically wrote that into the grant that we use this to ventilate patients that are part of the opioid overdose, and with that we were able to put it on every one of our trucks solely with grant funding. And so
Right.
that's how we did it. And then
I-
of course,
I-
as
I
we
would
go
love to
forward,
yeah.
a Hamilton should be part of every setup for every new truck going forward.
Okay. Listen, I'm begging you guys, you and Brad, you got to please, and maybe link up with Tanner, and Jesse, maybe you could help, but the NAMSP abstracts are due by the 15th, I believe. And literally, just so you know, Chief Hughes, it's nothing more than just kind of putting the data that you already have together in an abstract. It's not the full paper. It's not peer reviewed. It's 350 words. You have plenty of data to do it. And then NAMSP's in Tampa this year, which all of you should be coming to anyway. And then we can sit at the bar and have some drinks and talk about it. But like, you guys are doing some great stuff, right? And I really want to see this information, because we shouldn't be sitting here saying we think this thing works. We know because of the last lady that I put BiPAP on. It should be like, here's the data, right? We're scientists after all at the end of the day, and this is how we elevate the field and the specialty of EMS. So let me bring in as our capstone, if you will, Dr. Shepke, who's been a true leader at the state. Many of the things that are happening across this state are because of him. And Ken, I see that you're on. I'm not sure if you're available to unmute yourself and speak, but I see probably not. Oh, there you are. Ken, any comments on what you're hearing? Any thoughts or any just wise words you want to give us while you're here?
Yeah, for the folks in Florida, the what Kerry's referring to is the opioid settlement dollars. Some of that comes from the state, and some counties got grant money directly to the county. So you'll have to look at your particular county to see if you can use that particular grant funding. So there's definitely lots of ways to try to get grant money for it. You just have to write it for what the grant is. In this case, opioid, Kerry wisely said we're saving opioid patients. I'm a big fan of using machines for CPR because we know the exact depth, the exact rate, the exact frequency of CPR, the exact volume of ventilation, exact rate of ventilation. All that stuff is very exacting, and humans are not exacting, but machines are. So this is a big step in the right direction for CPR. Combine that with mechanical CPR devices as well as in the ventilator piece. Most of the errors we see in cardiopulmonary resuscitation is people being overventilated. We see it at the hospitals especially, but we also see it pre-hospital still. It's a skill that's hard to get perfect, and the ventilator takes third of that error out of there. And obviously anything that improves the outcome for the rest of our patients. And the T1 is so versatile. BiPAP, I'm an enormous fan of BiPAP over CPAP. I would love to see Manatee do what was suggested by Charlie and compare the CPAP as a retrospective control to what their BiPAP is, see what those outcomes are, because we definitely need data like that to move forward. So, Peter, I appreciate you doing these webinars. They're always fantastic. Sorry I can't always get on each week.
No, of course. Actually, thank you. So Dr. Charlie Ingram, who's now the Associate Fellowship Director. So we have two new EMS fellows. I see Dr. Bengio is on. We also have Dr. Janil Parmar is on. And so Chief Hughes and Dr. Bachista, perhaps we could utilize Charlie and our two fellows to pull some of your data, all get on an abstract together. And again, it's as simple as knowing the data, throwing it into a 350 word abstract. So Charlie, Brad, and Kerry, can I connect all you guys?
Yeah, let's
And
maybe
Zed-
Absolutely.
let's maybe set up another call.
Yeah, absolutely. I have some decent availability for the next couple weeks for once.
Yeah, me too.
And the fellows do too, because I've decided it. So it's lovely.
Okay. And remember that part of the fellowship, there's a research requirement. So for anybody else on the call, and we have the Florida Center for EMS now. Florida's rocking and rolling because we have some great leadership at the state, Steve McCoy, Obviously Ken's up there and many others. So Florida's the place to be, and we need to put out research constantly to do that. So, all right, this has been amazing. We've had maybe probably the highest attended webinar, and LinkedIn was rocking and rolling with, we still have 16 viewers on LinkedIn, which is for this webinar, the highest by a long shot. And then thousands will watch it later. So thank you guys for your input. I will, I already put the link for the Peppy webinar in the chat. So it's, if you scroll up, you'll find it. And I'll stop the recording here. I'll stop the live.